laugh at this next part.
In a world of political correctness and cancel culture, two comedians have risen up to prove that with the right angle, anything can be funny. This is You Can't Laugh at That.
Who writes these? We should have this person locked up and looked at.
Live from Golden Ox Studios in Cleveland, Ohio, it's Steve Mers and David Horning. On this week's episode,
create expectations and then shatter them.
Yeah.
Like, you know, make them think you're going west, and all of a sudden turn the steering wheel.
Right.
And that's the first thing I think about. Like, I never write a punchline first. I never write a punchline first. I always start out with a sentence, and then I think, what else could that mean? And then I try to surprise myself.
I crashed my car into a deer earlier today. It took like 20 minutes, but I got that fucker. I got pulled over by a cop the other day. He gets out of his car, comes around to the window. Sir, you know I pulled you over. I'm like, no, sir, I promise you. So he pulled you over because I saw you on your cell phone. Just want to let you know I take that pretty seriously. My brother got killed by a guy on his cell phone. I was like, Jesus, officer. No, I'm sorry. I had no idea that was your brother back there.
You can't laugh at that.
You're such a good one-liner writer. Like,
thank you.
I bow down to you.
Oh well, thank you so much. Yeah, it's my favorite style of comedy.
Now you may want to know who we're talking to on this episode of You Can't Laugh at That. I am joined by, of course, Steve Mers, who's in space.
And Steve is Elon Musk put Mers into space.
And that the soothing sound you just heard were from the vocal cords of AJ DiCosimo.
That's me.
A Cleveland comedian. Would you consider yourself a comedian or a comedy writer or what?
I would say comedian. I could do like a couple different forms. I would say comedian. Yeah.
What's your favorite form?
I don't know. Like I go through phases where I like one more than the other. Right now it's lit humor. Like I like writing for the written page a lot. But when I'm there, like at like a club or a mic, I really like being around stand-ups.
Mm-hmm.
And I like writing sketch. I like writing short film stuff. Like that's a lot of fun. But I go through phases.
Okay, and you've been published by a few different publications, right?
Yeah.
This is the part where he's going to pretend to be modest.
Don't be.
No, I have a piece coming out next month with Shouts and Murmurs in the New Yorker.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Big comedy guy over here.
Oh my God.
That's awesome, dude. You've got a couple pieces published in the New Yorker, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Yeah. This will be my fourth.
Cool.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Man.
So, yeah, it's fun. I like doing it.
You've also been published or contributed to the Weekly Humorist or
Weekly Humorist,
okay.
And Mad Magazine.
Okay. All right. And you are a Twitter joke writing machine.
Dude, I delete more jokes than I tweet. It's crazy. I'm a joke deleter on Twitter.
Still though, well, that's good for, whenever you get a contributor.
Whenever I inevitably get canceled for something I say.
Yeah, like right when you get like a consistent writing gig. It's like, oh, you told this joke about murder, which is I mean, well, that's the thing though. Like you delete jokes on Twitter. Like we get up on stage and we try stuff out that we may never use ever again. It's just
right. It's kind of the same thing.
Yeah, for sure. We're talking about murder today, which is a topic that we've sort of touched on, but not to the extent that we will be doing here today. We did death, and with like the broader topic of death, and then suicide, which, unless we're talking about a murder suicide,
that sounds like a hilarious episode.
Yeah, it was just really uplifting. You know, it's just one of those, you know, the beam of sunlight to break up the morose grayness of our day. Because the point of this podcast is, you know, let's take this topic and find out why it's funny, because anything can be funny. And what made you decide on murder as the topic today?
I just, for some reason, a common theme in the stuff I write is unnatural death. And I don't know why, like, that's just so funny to me. Like, it's just, you know how, like, there's, like, certain things that all of us as, like, comedians, we just naturally we find common themes in our stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, I don't know, like, I'm a huge fan of murder shows. Like, I remember growing up, like, I would stay home from school or something, or like during the summer, I would just watch Unsolved Mysteries and The Golden Girls on Lifetime.
Yeah.
Just all day.
It's a solid back-to-back.
Yeah. And it would be like, I remember like watching Unsolved Mysteries and being like terrified my mom was going to get murdered. Just petrified. And then like later on, I was just like, I don't know. It makes me uncomfortable. Like the idea of getting murdered makes me uncomfortable.
Yeah, it does me too.
Yeah.
I look forward to it.
Just for everybody.
Right.
I have a picture of my dead body on a vision board.
Well, Dave, you're weird though.
Yeah, I know. Thank you. Now you say you were worried about like your mom getting murdered. How did you find yourself like finding the funny in these Unsolved Mysteries episodes and like murder when you were a kid? Like,
I would find humor in certain elements of Unsolved Mysteries. Like, for whatever reason, like whenever Robert Stack would go, update. It was like they found him. He was a wandering street grifter in Calcutta. And I'm just like, what? That's like, why would, I don't know. Like, it's just certain elements of Unsolved. Like, I didn't find like the idea of it to be so funny. Is like just like certain things happening. Like literally, like the show would happen. I'd watch this horrifying situation, and then not even seconds later, oh, we knew what happened. Now it's a solved mystery.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do they have to pull those episodes when they solve them?
No, I mean, I'll still watch like reruns of episodes from like 1987. Yeah, and it's just like it's still going on. I don't know.
I think the voice is pretty absurd, even though that's not quite touching on what we're talking about because we're not laughing at the death itself. But that voice, looking back, is pretty funny.
Yeah. Update.
A lot of times, like the murder itself isn't what's funny. I mean, no one's ever like, "Oh, that guy got murdered. That's hilarious."
Right. Sometimes it's like the conditions surrounding the murder. This is just like funnier than anything I'm going to talk about all day.
But
the idea of Steve like floating and hovering above the earth.
I'm not. It's fake.
What?
Would it be funny if next season? Would it be funny if next season on Unsolved Mysteries, Steve Mers goes missing, and then it's like, update, he's been floating in space.
Podcasting from orbit.
That's right.
No, I don't know about you guys, but when someone dies, I think it's fucking hilarious.
Yeah, do elaborate.
Yeah, I want to hear more.
Well, like, all right, so you find out someone died, and I'm just like... So that's pretty much the experience.
All right.
Yeah.
Steve, you rascal.
Yeah, that was deep. That was real deep. You really took a dive on that.
Base 9.
I'm just kidding. This is the rest of the show. Just be Steve making space puns.
I won't. I'll allow it.
All right.
I'll allow it for sure.
E.T. phone home. Elliot. Elliot.
You should just do it. I mean, you do turn the reverb on the speaker at TikTok and do the jokes from Spaceline.
Someone get me some Reese's Pieces.
You can't get more socially distant than Steve is right now.
Steven Spielberg once said, "Kill your darlings." So I drowned my children in the bathtub.
Spielberg told me to do it.
And it turns out I made a huge mistake. Stephen King actually said that.
Nah. One of the Steves. I don't know. You guys stick together.
There's a lot of Steves out there.
Speaking of a lot of Steves out there, your jokes, the clip that you shared, let's get to that. That was a segue. It could have been better.
They're called hoverboards.
What's that?
They're called hoverboards.
Fair.
Why am I bombing? Just play the fucking clip.
We already did.
I feel like I'm at a Zoom show. No, another. Just play another clip.
We got to talk about AJ's clip real quick. AJ, those
fucking
jokes.
Thing sucks.
Your jokes, AJ. Were they tweets initially, or were you just like, I'm going to write these for stage?
I think a lot of my jokes start out as tweets first. Like I'll tweet them out, and depending on how well they do and like the type of structure, I'll be like, okay, maybe I'll take them and try them out on stage. I'm pretty sure definitely both of those jokes I tweeted first, and then I did them. Yeah.
Was that the initial form of each one of those jokes? Like, was there more to it? Was there less to it? Or was that just like, this is the way it was written the first time I wrote it and it worked and it continues to work?
Pretty much anytime you see me like do something on stage, it's pretty much how I send it out there. Like I don't put anything out until I feel like it's ready. I go over it with like a fine-tooth comb before I send it out. I mean, I do revisions later. Like if I find like
he's the dude.
I do.
I do.
I'm sorry. I'm like, all right, keep going.
But do you guys see that notification?
Heard it.
Yeah, I saw it.
Did you see it?
Is it a sext?
No, it wasn't a sext.
Here's backwards on our screens.
Your OnlyFans is set to expire if you don't update your information by tonight.
But no, I mean, most of the jokes, like the second I like tweet them or like write them out, they're kind of like ready. I'm like, okay, I'll take them up on stage.
Yeah. And they're super tight. I mean, like, you go through them with a fine tooth comb and you can definitely tell, because your style is very like, it's kind of like Jesselnick where, I mean, you're one-liner, sure, but you set us up and then you quickly pull the rug out from under us for the punchline.
Yeah. I find that to me, I think all of us, like when we start doing like stand-up, we try to do stand-up in the style that makes us laugh the most first.
Sure.
Right. And it's just like, I just find that like that type of style is just, it's so, it just makes me laugh every single time. And if in some ways I find it to be easier than how like a long form storyteller would. And I also, in some ways it's harder because like with a storyteller, you can build momentum, right? Like you could make a joke and then build on that joke and it can like propel you into the next. With this, it's just like, okay, I write a joke. Now what?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like I'll spend a week on one joke. Yeah, and
you have to come up with like a whole other thing for a new joke. Got to be unrelated. With the topic like a bit, you can just keep snowballing it, and I think I just get what you're saying. Yeah.
But it's also easier, I think, in some ways, because it's just like, okay, like actually performing it, because it's just like, okay, if you don't like that joke, if one joke bombs, I got 4 more just coming out.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? Coming out of the barrel. Whereas like if your first joke bombs, if you're a storyteller, you're like, okay, now I got 4 more minutes of the in-laws I gotta talk about, and which I admire that aspect of that style. Like I can't do it. I'm just not very good. I tried it and it just doesn't work. Like the one-liner works for me.
I keep feeling at that too. Like I got to stick to one-liners. I do not like long bits.
Yeah. Well, I think you're pretty good at long bits.
Well, they're all one-liners that are interrelated. So after over years, they become bits, but really they're just one-liners that are related, like by topic.
It's that thread that you can follow. I mean, if you can do an entire set with the same theme, like I'm sure you could pick out enough jokes to fill that time.
Yeah.
And I mean, you can twist it too. Like it doesn't have to be just straight about like murder or death. Like in this case, you start with the hit a deer bit.
Yeah.
Which
that actually happened.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wrote that. I hit a deer and I wrote that joke 5 minutes after.
It down?
No, I didn't chase it down. I was on a date actually, and I hit the deer taking her home.
That's romantic.
Ooh. The deer was taking her home and you hit him because he was taking her home?
Yeah, that's what happened.
Okay. Just wanted to clear the air.
Yeah.
I heard it here first.
No, like I was taking her home and then just whack, I hit a deer. And I'm like, I fucking hope that thing's dead. Like, I hope it didn't survive.
Yeah.
Yeah, there are some things I wish are dead. You know how they say like you shouldn't wish death upon someone or some things? Like I legitimately hope some people and some things die. I don't feel bad about that. I don't feel bad about it. Maybe I should. Maybe that makes me a terrible person. I don't know. But there are legitimate people. Like I would be glad if they weren't alive anymore.
Would you be the one to do it?
No, I don't think I actually have murder in me. I don't think I could. But if I found out like someone got murdered, like some of the people that I'm thinking of, I could be like, I could see why someone would murder.
Yeah, as soon as you figure out it's better than fucking, then yeah, you'll start doing it a lot.
Yeah.
Or doing both at the same time.
And Steve just stumbled upon what I'm afraid of.
Oh no.
I'm gonna like it too much.
Yeah, that I would like it too much. It starts out with animals.
You're not wrong.
Yeah.
Animals.
And then maybe you've got, I don't know, say a police officer's brother.
Which that didn't happen.
No, that was more of an accidental death. But if it felt good, then maybe next time it wouldn't be much of an accident. That's another perfect example of the setup and the pauses that you make while you're setting it up. Like in a joke like that, because it's a longer setup. It's not just like here's a sentence and here's a punchline. It's like you build it. There's like a tiered. It's like a tiered setup to kind of make sure we're looking over here, and then you deliver the punchline. And it's like it's great.
Yeah, I forget who said it, but it was just like essentially like create expectations and then shatter them.
Yeah,
like make them think you're going west, and then all of a sudden turn the steering wheel.
Right.
And that's the first thing I think about. Like I never write a punchline first. I never write a punchline first. I always like start out with a sentence, and then I think, what else could that mean? And then I try to surprise myself. And if I laugh at the joke, then I'm like, okay, somebody.
That's great. That's a great way to look at it. If you can make yourself laugh, like when you're coming up with a joke, then it's got a higher chance of being successful.
Yeah, because I don't know about you guys. Like, you guys have been doing stand-up for a long time. Like, if I watch stand-up, like, I don't really laugh at it so much anymore.
Depends for me too. Yeah, sometimes I'll be like, "This is hilarious," but I will not laugh the whole time.
Yeah,
I'm kind of like, "Oh, that's funny."
Yeah,
Like,
it doesn't even mean it's bad, because sometimes it is bad and you're not laughing, but other times it's like it's just not eliciting that visceral laughter, which I honestly crave. So it's a little disappointing in that sense, because true laughter is just like the best feeling in the world.
Well, Steve, that's why when I hang out with you, like in our like when we hang out, like we're cracking each other up the entire time, pretty much.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like, as I like hanging out with you for that reason. It's just kind of like rarely do I ever hang out with somebody that really elicits that. Like, I think that Steve and Dave, I think you guys are hilarious. And it's rare that I meet people that just make me laugh, because it's just kind of like, because as a comic, you're kind of trained to sort of see the trick.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, you're just kind of like, okay, I know where you're going.
Yeah, it's hard. It's hard. It's not hard to watch comedy. I love it. But you're right. And even if somebody's killing, I'll probably laugh just because the rest of the room's laugh and the energy's there. And like, I love watching comics that tell the same joke, and I've seen that joke over and over again, but I can still laugh because now I'm experiencing that joke with this group of people who's never experienced it before. Yeah. And it's like, it feels new to me. That's like the thing that I've found to learn to appreciate when it comes to comedy.
Yeah, is because it really does change, like, depending on what environment you're in and who you're surrounded by.
Yeah. That's why it's harder to watch a stand-up special more than once, unless you're really like trying to break down jokes. Because it's the same audience having the same experience as last time. Like, it's not as like new. It's not as exciting as it was comedy, right?
If it's really good, you'll watch it again, but you may not necessarily laugh at it like you did. Right. But you're just like, oh, this is so good.
Yeah.
That is true about Reggie Watts' Why Shit So Crazy from Comedy Central. That was like 10 years ago.
Yeah, I've never watched him do stand-up.
Oh my God, he's so good.
Good. Yeah. He's really good. It's like that with me, Zach Galifianakis at the Purple Onion.
Oh yeah, that's another classic.
Yeah, dude, it's so good. But it's a hodgepodge. Like, there's some like character work involved. Like, and I just love but he's a one-liner guy too at like his core. And it's just so funny.
Because they're musicians, and then they got the one-liners, and then they do impress like characters, and yeah, it's a weird sideshow kind of deal, but it's really good.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Who do you look at as your influence?
Are we talking about stand-up?
Yeah, comedy in general, but I mean, more if it was start with stand-up, and then like what influenced your style?
In terms of stand-up, I really like the three big people that I think are like super duper funny: Stephen Wright, Rodney Dangerfield, and Joan Rivers. I'm just a huge fan of those three. And I also like I like Zach Galifianakis. I like Steve Martin a lot. And I really think Nikki Glaser is hilarious.
Yeah.
She's like a newer, like the newest out of all the ones I've mentioned, that I'm just like, oh my God, she just is a savage. She's so good. Yeah.
Her work has gotten more nuanced. Like, I mean, I would hope it would. You produce a special, and a couple of years later, your next special should definitely be stronger on some level. And she's really, over the years, because I remember seeing her when I worked at Caroline's in New York. I remember seeing her, and I was like, she's funny. But then, you watch her roasts, you watch her specials, and it's just, she's leaps and bounds beyond where she was 8 years ago. Which I would hope so.
Oh, and Chris Rock. I love Chris. He's the one that I watched as a young man and wanted to get into stand-up. I was like, that looks like so much fun.
Would you say there's like a thread between them on like why you like them? Like, do you ever think about why you like any of these comics?
I think if we're talking about the one-liner people, I think that's like the stand-up in its purest form. Like is the one-liner comic. I mean, that's kind of like where it started, and the fact that like that kind of continued. You know, it's kind of like a tradition. Like that is traditional stand-up. That's where it started. It was some dude going, "What not, Steve?"
Jokey jokes.
Yeah, jokey jokes. It was, you know, like it was dudes going up in burlesque clubs, cabaret shows, like in between the strippers, just telling jokes.
Mm-hmm.
And then, you know, Groucho brought it to, you know, film, and that's why I like the one-liner guy. It's because one-liner comic is because it's just so like
it's powerful,
kind of a relic. What?
It's powerful too.
It is.
It's got a little bit more punch to it than it depends, though. I mean, obviously that's not true for everybody, but I feel like it's just punchier.
It is. It's just no one will not laugh at a good joke. Right? I mean, it's designed to elicit a response out of you. It's a math equation. It's 2 + 2 = 4. You have this element, you have this element, and then you get this element.
Some jokes people just cannot help but laugh.
Yeah. Like there are some things that will never stop being funny. And the one-liner will never stop being funny if you write it right and if you craft it in the right way. It will just always work. The same way like the rubber chicken will always work.
And with one-liners, it's more imperative, like you said, to create expectations and then shatter them. Like that's just a very quick like expectation shattered, tension release. Like it's quick. And actually what's going on in your brain too is like the same neurons fire in your brain when you solve a problem as when you get a joke. And that's like mental exercise. So those jokes like that, audiences are very quickly like connecting the dots subconscious level if you want to get real nerdy about it. And, and that's why it's so satisfying.
Like one of my favorite jokes that I like to do is you know, when I was a kid, I walked out on my grandparents having sex.
Like
yeah, you know, and that was pretty crazy because I didn't see all 4 of them in the same room all that often.
I love that joke.
You know, and like that joke, I mean, we can, you know, I forget who said it, but like dissecting comedy is like dissecting a frog, right? You don't really learn anything and the frog dies from it. But like that's kind of like what when I say like in the setup, I'm giving you an expectation. Like I'm saying like, yeah, I walked out my grandparents having sex. You're assuming like you walked in on one pair of your grandparents having sex, but then I'm revealing
your grandparents from one side and the other from the other side.
Yeah.
Steve, you have like 20 grandparents.
Yeah, Steve has a lot of grandparents. He collects some like Pokemon cards.
He keeps them in his basement.
He's like, I'll trade you my Earl for your Harold. I don't know.
So, and that strategy, that, you know, tension and release, like that's
good example, David. Good example. You just say something like, I hate Norwegians. And then you're like, I'm just kidding. See, you like build up the tension and then release it.
You know, and I've been waiting to write a good joke about hating Norwegians for years, and Steve just did it. And like
right there.
Yeah.
Right there. That's why he's a master.
Right.
Yeah. Steve, you I mean, you're a one-liner comic as well. I mean, you put together, like you said, more bits. And you touch on a lot of dark topics. That's one of the reasons why I wanted to do this show together. I'm not sure where I was going with that, but I mean, you know, you do I love watching you control the emotions of an audience. Like,
he's really good at that.
Yeah, you conduct, like you're a conductor up there when you're on and when you're like crushing it. It's fun to watch.
It's fun to do. That's why we do it. I have fun doing it. Otherwise, I don't think I would still be doing this.
It's so great. Like, I love like watching Steve work because like there's an element like when Steve's up there, you kind of tell he's just like, all right, I'm here. But it's so controlled. You have so much control up there. Like the second you get behind the mic, like it's yours. And you're just controlling everything that's happening for the next 5 to 10, 15 minutes.
But even if I'm in, I said, as long as I'm in a good mood.
Yeah, but even when you're in a bad mood, I've seen you do stand up in a bad mood. And you're just, the only difference is you still have control. You just seem a little grumpier.
Yeah, it's not a big difference from my perspective.
No.
Yeah.
No,
when you're having fun up there versus when you're hating it, like there's little difference in your body language. Like there's little, like I can tell, but it's slight. It's very slight.
I know because I know Steve.
Yeah.
Like I can tell when he's not enjoying it, but like the lay person, like the person that just walked in to go check out a comedy show, I don't think they can tell. And that's why Steve's so good. Like Steve is just a master at kind of like, okay, this is my time now. And he gets you like hanging on to what he's saying.
It took years to get that. The first 5 years of doing comedy, I would not like that. So that's definitely a more recent development. I'd say after 8 years, I'd say the last 4 years were like that. Before that, it was super uncomfortable.
It's just confidence.
Occasionally, still uncomfortable. You guys can see it's body language, but it's like, it's definitely receded a lot more these days.
I mean, it goes both ways. Like if your body language says confidence, you know, it calms the audience down. Like they know they're in good hands. And same with like your tone of voice or, you know, or like what's going on in your head. You're like, all right, I'm confident. Like you don't even think about it at a certain point because you've done it so many times. It's just like, who cares? You know, if you have that who cares mentality, you can get away with the darker jokes because if you're confident in it, even if the joke doesn't land, like the audience might still be with you on it.
Yeah.
I just tried a new joke last night about Confederate statues, and the one note John Armstrong gave me was, if you have more confidence in it, they'll be with you. Because the first line I give is like, it's that like misleading because I start by saying, I think they should keep Confederate statues. And my whole message is like, obviously not, but
right.
But the way I deliver it is in that like, here's what you think I'm going to do. And then here's what I do.
What was the joke? What was the Confederate?
I said I think we should keep Confederate statues, but we should change the story. So it's like right there. That's the statue of Robert E. Lee. It was the one that I put on Twitter the other day.
I saw it on Twitter.
But I've added to it. That's a statue of Robert E. Lee on his horse right before he had sex with his horse. Mm. This is a statue of Jefferson Davis with his kids right before he had sex with a horse.
That Jeff Davis.
And then, God, what was the next line? Shoot, what did I? God, it was like a 4-part joke. Right before he had sex with his horse. Yeah, the South wants you to think that the Civil War was about states' rights, but when really it was about the right to own and have sex with your horse.
With the horse.
Yeah, and the last line is. They want you to think these Confederate statues are American heroes. They're changing history. So if they can do that, I can change their history and say they were a bunch of horse fuckers.
Right. This is the first time after hearing that bit I ever looked at history and go, you know what? Maybe if the South would have won, I wouldn't be breaking the law right now. You know? Like, I'm just fucking horses every day, dude.
Really, I'm approaching this joke from a place of truth.
Right. And you really hit a nerve with me there, Dave.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Well, you know, I mean, we did talk about killing animals. Why not?
Yeah.
Got to experiment a little bit first.
That's right.
Speaking of murderers, there are so many different perspectives to approach murder from which to approach murder. Get your English straight, David. Never end a sentence with a preposition unless you end a sentence with a preposition. That's the rule. There are so many different perspectives to approach this topic, from which to approach this topic. I just broached my own lesson that I gave myself. So in this case, you do the misleading. You have them. You have the audience believing you're telling one story, and then you reveal that, oh, this is actually what's going on here. Yeah. Which is a great way to do it, because you almost jab them and they don't realize they're laughing about a murder. And until like they're done laughing, it's like, oh, I just laughed about the death of a cop's brother. Cool. But there are so many different ways to do it. For example, I mean, if murder was legal, there are so many different ways to take that. You know, if you are the murderer itself, the murderer, him or herself, like that could be funny. Right now, you know, you get on Spotify or Stitcher or any of these podcasting platforms, and there are dozens. And they're the top podcast of the day. Like
hundreds. There's hundreds of podcasts about this.
Yeah.
About murder. Like My Favorite Murder. It's a great podcast. I listen to it all the time.
My Favorite Murder, Small Town Murder, Last Podcast on the Left. Like, I mean, there's so many. But what a lot of them do is they make it funny. Because if you're going to talk about something super dark for an hour and a half, it can't just be that one note, or else people, you know. Yeah.
People they're going to stop.
Right. I think Steve's laughing that
Sorry, I was just thinking about everybody being killed.
And
no, it's just you guys laughing at me. Like I'm laughing at you laughing at me. It looked like a little head on a magic carpet going through space.
Normally with these episodes for the art or whatever, for each episode we use the headshot of the comic that we use, but in this case it's just going to be Steve in space, so people know what we're talking about, right?
Right.
All right. Anyway, so a million different ways to go at this. So these podcasts, I mean, they obviously have to bring levity to the topic, because one note about something like so depressing and so dark and so like morally wrong, like you have to break up the monotony of that. It's just like, you know, when you structure a set, you can't have every joke can't be just a banger. Like you need to have a couple jokes to like, you know, kind of control the tone of the room. There has to be an ebb and a flow, because without the ebbs, people won't appreciate the flows.
Right.
So like, how do you, I don't know if I want to frame this as a question, or like, let's just talk about murder podcasts, because I mean, you listen to My Favorite Murder. Like, do they do that?
They never make fun of the murder. They'll like make jokes like surrounding the murder.
Okay.
Which it's good. I mean, like there's the punching down element, right? Like never really make fun of the victim.
Right.
But even that rule can be broken if you're trying to showcase how evil the villain is. You know, like, yeah, I mean, that's what they do. I mean, they just make jokes surrounding like about the justice system, about like, you know, stuff like that. I mean, never at the expense of the victim.
They also make jokes like about their general ignorance, about
like the host's ignorance,
knowledge of facts.
Okay, yeah.
Shit, yeah.
So, can you hear that?
Yeah,
Okay.
Yeah. They do that too.
Yeah, and that's a great angle to take in itself too, because I mean, if you punch down on yourself, and especially when you're talking about something so dark, it definitely eases the tension from an audience member's perspective. Yeah, my girlfriend, she listens to like all of them. She listens to all of the podcasts. We've almost gotten to a point where we idolize like some of these serial killers too, where it's almost like disturbing. There's almost like a sexualization of them, which is weird to me.
That's definitely bizarre.
Who's Richard Ramirez?
Oh my God,
the Night Stalker.
Oh, he's like a stinky man.
The Night Stalker. He broke into a bunch of elderly people's houses in Southern California in like the late 80s, early 90s.
Tall, dark, not handsome man. I don't understand the cult following. Apparently he was stinky and had like bright yellow teeth. I don't know.
My favorite.
Well,
what do you look for in a man?
Well, in her defense, Greg Allman fits that description too. Like, so I mean, I don't know. I mean, yeah, I think people are turned on by the taboo of it and just like going to the edge. You know, like that's what I imagine why people like sexualize people like that is because they have just this thing inside them, like, oh, things that are bad can sometimes be sexy.
Power dynamics and sadomasochism.
Yeah.
Would you?
Steve really answered that question quick. He put that into words, like almost way too fast. Like almost way too fast. I was trying to like figure out how to word it, and Steve's like, "Oh yeah, power dynamics, sadomasochism."
You know what's really fucked up is I was dating a girl last year, and I kept joking with her about being a serial killer, and it was like weird. You know this person, so it's not like it's just funny to me because like it was just a running joke that got like old pretty fast.
It's so many different directions.
It's hard to explain, but like obviously I'm not a serial killer, but it was just like, all right, Steve, stop. It was funny. This person laughed every single time, but it might have been uncomfortable after. I don't know.
Yeah, the more you say it, the more I'm starting to question.
Well, who am I? I'm awesome, and I'm a nice dude, and I'm not a serial killer, so it was clearly just a joke, but it was just like, all right.
Right, Dave, he's clearly not a serial killer.
I'm awesome. I'm
awesome. I'm great, and I'm totally not a serial killer. I'm totally not.
That would be my dating profile if I had one right now.
Yeah,
those three attributes. Would you almost liken the idolization, like the sexualization of that, to a comedian who is towing the line on an offensive topic, like on an offensive joke, like having the power to get an audience to laugh at something that is right on the line or may even be over the line?
Yeah, sometimes I think some comics really like towing that line almost a little too much. And I'm just kind of like, where's the joke here? Like, don't get me wrong. Like, do you know what offends me? A bad joke about an offensive thing.
Yeah.
That offends me.
Ugh.
Yeah. Like, okay, 90% of I've found that when a comic gets canceled for something they say, it's because they missed the mark and the joke was awful. If it was a good joke, they wouldn't have gotten shit. It's because they didn't draw a clear enough line as to where they stood in the element of what they're talking about. Like, okay, Louis got canceled because he used his power to jerk off in front of women, right?
Right.
That's why he got canceled, which is kind of creepy and weird, right? We can all agree to that.
Sure.
We were also watched Louis say the N-word on stage, and no one said a thing about it. You know what I'm saying? Like, he didn't get canceled for that because he was clear and concise and he hit his point. Right? Yeah. Or am I like going crazy here?
No, you're. There are so many comics that have said things that were funny And that's why they're still at the level that they are. I mean, if you listen to Jesselnick's set, he says so many things that betray people's sensibilities, but they're funny.
Exactly. And that's the thing. It's just like, did you watch Eric Andre's new special?
No.
Legalize Everything. It was great. It was vulgar. It was ridiculous. And it hit the right points. Not once did it ever punch down. Ever. You can say whatever you want as long as your point is clear. You can say, oh, I didn't mean for that to come out racist. I didn't mean for that to come out sexist. All you want. If it does, it does. And if it doesn't, it doesn't. If it's a good joke, nobody will find it racist or sexist because it's a good joke and you drew a clearly defined line.
Right. There's a big difference between Louis C.K. using the N-word on stage and Michael Richards. Exactly.
And I'm preaching to the choir here, probably.
No, sure. But we like to reaffirm our own.
Yeah. We like to justify what we
that's
what we believe in.
Yeah. So I think that kind of sets up the first clip that we're going to do. It is the Jim Norton clip from his
The Degenerates.
The Degenerates.
You know what's interesting? I've seen 30 plus Ted Bundy documentaries, and after all those documentaries, not one article is written saying maybe it's detrimental for the culture. Not one social media campaign is started attempting to punish the directors or the producers or to criticize them for making these documentaries. Everybody is okay with it. But if Bill Maher does a racist joke, or Louis makes fun of the Parkland shooting, or Chappelle makes fun of LGBT issues, people lose their fucking minds. Oh my God. Comedy has gone too far. Comedians have got to stop. This is damaging the culture. Cancel these comedians. Hold on. I'd like to hear Ted's take. It's fucking psychotic. And I'm not saying the documentary shouldn't exist. I'm just pointing out the mental illness the country is going through, thinking that humor is somehow contributing to dangerous behavior. It's not. And they're saying things like, well, comedians should punch up. How come comedians are the only ones hearing this shit? How come authors don't have to punch up? Stephen King kills children in his books. Do you know how pissed off people would be if it was a comedy? How come actors don't have to punch up? They'll go back and grab a comedian's tweets from 10 years ago and try to crucify him. They never do that to actors. You can play any role, no matter how barbaric, and it's totally acceptable. Zac Efron played Ted Bundy. And people were fine with it. If you do a rape joke, people are like, you're a pig. Don't ever talk about that. Zac, great job. You really look like you... Did you rape and kill that girl? All right. You really look like you raped her and killed her. My girlfriend threw up. Man, you are an artist. And then they give you this bullshit. Well, if you make a joke about something, it creates and fosters an environment where that behavior somehow seems acceptable and it might encourage somebody, which is such shit. No rape has ever been caused because of something a stand-up comedian has said. It's just not the way it works. I've never heard a rape victim going, it was terrible, he came in, he was laughing.
You can't laugh at that.
I can counter that argument of his a little here.
I can't. I don't agree 100% with what he was saying.
I don't either. He is right. He is right, but he's not nuanced enough with his response and again, he's doing comedy right there, so I can't really sit here and be like he's being 100% serious either. Although comics do this all the time. You can't say anything anymore. You can't say, no.
I've never...
like hearing about it.
I've never felt like I couldn't talk about something if I couldn't find legitimate humor in it.
I've been able to get away with quite a bit, but that's because I know how to word shit. But the thing is, the problem with these, how do I put this? Like, the comics are not always actors. So sometimes comics aren't good at being like, hey, I'm in a complete state of fiction here. Sometimes, you got comics going up the whole show. If it's not like him doing an hour, and they're all taking different perspectives, and a lot of times it's very dry. But I guess the comic has to be good. I don't know. This is all such a circumstantial issue. Like, let me see what you're talking about.
I mean, let's start out by saying, like, he's dead wrong in the sense that, like, people don't come after actors or authors. Like, people, like, there were banned books for years.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like, there were C. Thomas Howell's career ended because he did blackface in a movie, which missed the mark. You know what I'm saying? Like, whereas Robert Downey Jr. did blackface in a movie, and he did it satirizing the idea of it. And the big thing people got offended by in Tropic Thunder was Ben Stiller's portrayal of Simple Jack, which totally missed the mark. Like, he didn't, you know, I mean, I think comics should be forgiven for missing the mark sometimes because nobody's perfect. Everybody fucks up at their job. But you can tell the difference. Like, you can tell the difference between a joke that doesn't land and a joke that was, like, inspired by legitimate hostility towards someone or something. You know what I'm saying? Like, like, he's wrong in that aspect. I mean, yeah, authors get it all the time. Stephen King got criticized a couple years ago for it. And the fact that there was this weird, I've never read it, so I'm kind of, like, picking out, like, things that I've heard. But I think that there was, like, kids having sex in it, and it was kind of, like, really in depth and kind of creepy and weird. And he just got shit for that recently.
Yeah, it's not a fair comparison to say that, you know, Ted Bundy, the documentary is not meant for people to laugh at. These are facts.
Right.
This is all just reporting what is going on. And if people are attracted to that, they're also, again, they're just reporting how they feel. They're not there is a glorification there, but it's not compatible to argue about with comedy. It just doesn't fit.
Right. So by his logic, there not be any documentaries about the Third Reich.
Right.
You know, should there not be any documentaries about Napoleon or the Marquis de Sade? Like, all these people did fucked up shit, and nobody's glorifying it. Yeah. It's just when you try to laugh at something that clearly is, when you miss the mark on making a joke about something that makes people uncomfortable, it's not a good joke, and you didn't work. You got, I don't know if laziness isn't the right word, but it's almost negligent in the sense, like, you didn't work hard enough to find the humor in it. Like, there's a difference between, and some things, like, I just have no perspective on, right? Like, I'm not like when people tell me, like, don't make rape jokes, it's just like, okay, I never would. Right? Like, I never would. I mean, and the times I may have, it's just like, yeah, I crossed the line. Somebody called me out on it, and I apologized, and I legitimately meant it. If like I said, I mean, if that ever happened, I can't remember a case. But there have been people that have called me out on a joke, and instead of trying to defend it, do you know what I did? I just said, okay, well, that wasn't my intention. I'll never tell that joke again. It's that simple. Like, you just don't do it. And it's never been my intention to offend, but, like, I'm not perfect. You're not perfect. Steve isn't perfect. We've all made jokes that could come back and hit us.
Yeah. You know, to take the other side real quick, but conversely, the other side of this, which is applied to other circumstances about what we're talking about, completely different circumstances. But these two things, what you were just talking about, what I'm about to talk about, are conflated together. And so what I'm going to say is that people don't understand satire and sarcasm either.
Yeah, that's true.
It's all circumstantial. Are you good at pulling it off? Is it sarcasm or satire? Like, these things matter. And when you lump all these all these fake dummy incidents that you claim exist, but you're not citing individually, you kind of lump it all together and you go, you can't say anything anymore. Whoa, what are we talking about here? What specifically?
Exactly. It's just like The Onion never gets shit, and they say some pretty fucking intense stuff, man.
Yeah, everybody understands what the Onion is.
Most people do. Most people do. Some people don't. Like, it's it's just weird. Like I said, I've never felt like I've ever been in danger of getting, and I'm not really afraid of it either. It's just like if somebody like finds something and wants to expose me and cancel me for something, it's like, go ahead, that's fine. I don't care.
You're really going to take this time?
Wait, what?
You're really going to take this time to cancel me?
Yeah, I'm just like, and nobody's ever canceled forever either. I mean, like people act like, I don't know who's worse. Like I don't know what's worse, cancel culture or people who bitch about cancel culture.
It's two sides of the same coin.
Yeah.
It's just like, one, it's always existed.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I mean, Lenny Bruce got canceled.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, you can make that being the first case, and he did nothing wrong. Now there are some people who get canceled that fucking deserve it.
Yeah. Like
Gilda answered.
Like who?
Like
Gilda Rad.
Gilda Radner.
I'm gonna for saying that.
No, she got canceled.
Yeah.
Yeah, not canceled, Steve.
That's what I said.
Oh.
I said she canceled.
Oh, I didn't hear that. I'm sorry.
Yeah, that was the joke.
I have a Bluetooth speaker. It's like a cheap Chinese knockoff, and when you disconnect your phone from it, it goes Bluetooth canceled.
That's funny.
It's one of my favorite things. No, that's a good point. So it is both sides of the same. I mean, it's two sides of the same coin. I mean, I'm with you on that. Write better jokes, but what Jim Norton does in that bit is he doesn't mention himself. He mentions Louis C.K. talking about pedophiles, which is a great bit. Dave Chappelle talking about LGBTQ, which is like a great kind of way to, he's like sharing his point of view in that bit. And without actually listening to what he's talking about, people are like, you can't say that. And I think the point that he's, from my perspective, that Jim Norton is trying to make here is that like, that isn't as harmful as saying this serial killer who we're going to spend hours on and have one of like the most handsome actors in Hollywood play and like call him a genius and call him handsome, like which does more harm?
I mean, if you ask me, neither really does like any fucking harm. Like I've never watched a movie about someone and said like, oh, I'm going to go do that thing.
It's like the
right. I've never watched. Right. It's like, right. I've never watched Die Hard and was just like, oh, if a whole bunch of fucking terrorists take over the Nakatomi building, I'm going to go barefoot through the fucking thing and try to kill all of them. Like,
I don't know. Half Baked ruined my life.
Right. Like, I mean, it's most sensible people would see that and be like, okay, this is fiction and this is, or it's a portrayal of a heinous person, an individual, and they should not be idolized. And I think, yeah, there is the extreme that says like, oh, this is the root of the problem. It's video games and
rap
hanging
music. From a thread already.
Right. And it's just like, there's been violent art and pornographic art for centuries.
Millennia.
Right. Yeah. Like it's never going to go away. And it's just like, I don't particularly care if it does. I mean, but also going to him, like he can't be pissed that people are outraged either. Like if you're going to tackle certain things, you are opening yourself up for criticism.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's a difference between canceling somebody that touches on an offensive thing. There's a difference between that and canceling Ellen DeGeneres in the 90s for being a genuine, authentic person, for being who she was. Mm-hmm. Like that's way different. Those are worlds different. Like you can't go up there and talk about race and expect some people not to be offended by that. You're touching on a touchy subject.
Mm-hmm.
So to say, why can't everybody just fucking agree on something and say like, we can all do this? It's just like, no, that's not how it works. Like people are allowed to say whatever you want. You are allowed to say whatever you want. and everybody has also the right to be offended by what you say.
First of all, there's a difference between criticism and then getting canceled. So there's those two things. Criticism, don't even fucking tell someone not to criticize you. And obviously you're allowed to criticize them criticizing you, but it's like, come on. And then canceling, that's like, you know, I actually don't have an opinion on that. I might have had an opinion on it before, but as of right now, I don't actually have an answer. I don't know if people should be or shouldn't be canceled.
I think it's a challenge. You have to write better jokes.
You just have to write better. Right. And that's all I'm saying. It's just like, you don't want to get canceled, write better fucking jokes. That's all I'm saying. It's just like, nobody is going to cancel you for touching on a touchy subject if you are a good writer and you do it the right way.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like, that's not going to happen. I mean, you know, it's a lot of this shit is just made up problems. Like, it's just like, all right, well, you don't want to get canceled. Don't be a fucking dick.
And then there's Louis C.K. for doing something outside of comedy and getting canceled. And then there's for saying something on stage. I can't conflate those two either. It's like, that doesn't make sense.
Well, I mean, who was that comic that got his offer from SNL taken away because he said something?
Shane Gillis.
He's actually hilarious this week.
It's just like, you know, I can't say that that's a cancel culture thing because that would happen at any job.
Right.
That's when it starts to get mocked. You're starting to mock someone's culture. That does hurt people's feelings, and that's understandable, especially when you emigrate to another country and everybody just fucking bullies you. Like, that's a legitimate thing that causes trauma in people's lives. So it's like, so there's the distinction in my book.
We have to look for intent. You know, I think that's the most important thing. Like, was the intent to make people laugh about something, or was the intent to offend people? And I think we touch on that. I think that's a theme that we bring up through a lot of these episodes. I mean, you know, we judge ourselves based off of our intent, but we judge other people based off of their actions. And it's like, and as a writer, as a comedian, like, you have to, like, the number one goal is this going to make people laugh? If not, then I'm not doing my job. I have to if I want to make a point about a certain topic, I've got to make sure that it's funny, that it's well crafted, especially if it's something that's touchy, because, you know, like, you can't get on stage and be like, oh, people don't think murder is hilarious anymore if they don't laugh at your murder joke. You got to find a way to communicate that. Like, murder, it's for the most part, it's not the joke, but it's the vehicle of the joke. Like, was the murderer an idiot? Was the circumstances, like, were those weird? There are so many different ways that you can frame it. As long as the intent is good, as long as you're trying to say something that makes people laugh genuinely, then I think you can get away with a lot more than if you're up there and you're just like, you know, the Asians do this. And
there is science that supports the idea that dark comedy is for people with a more advanced sense of humor. It's okay if you don't have that sense of humor, if it's not palatable to you. I'm not here to question your development of your taste. That's entirely like subjective. So it's like, this is, I don't know.
No, you guys, I mean, we're all on the same page here.
Mm-hmm.
Again, inflating each other's egos. I love it. Filleting each other's egos.
You can't laugh at that.
Didn't get enough murder in this episode? Well, stay tuned for episode 22 featuring AJ DiCosimo. We had to break this interview up into 2 different parts because we got so sidetracked. It happens. It's 3 comics filleting each other. All right, shut up. Thank you for listening, and we look forward to bringing you part 2 next week. If you'd like to weigh in on today's topic, follow us on Twitter at You Can't Laugh Pod, or like us on Facebook at You Can't Laugh at That, and tell us how you did laugh at today's topic, or how you didn't. This is all about the conversation, is what I'm saying. All right, bye.
You can't laugh at that.